Good evening all. Now, if you've been following the channel or you've looked at my previous two Pennant videos, you'll notice this build I don't have a Riven for the Pennant, and you'll notice I also one bang level 140 corrupted heavy gunners like easily, and you'll notice that in normal mission, one of the videos, it was an arbitration, every swing or every other swing I'm hitting 1 or 2 million damage per hit, and when a damage spike occurs you'll notice the damage numbers are like 15 million and higher. But in that video there's 3 things missing from the main build, which makes the build overall weaker, and even in that weaker version it was still hitting 15 million damage. So yeah, we'll jump into the main build, and first of all we'll take a look at every little bit that's required to make this build the powerhouse that it is without a Riven. Alright, first of all you're going to want yourself a Helios. It doesn't matter if it's the Prime or the Standard. You're going to want the Deconstructor Prime, which is the main thing you're after. You could probably already tell where this is going. You're going to want the 3 Gladiator mods on your Deconstructor Prime. It doesn't matter if those mods are leveled up or not. You're just after the 60, well, that'll scale up obviously with the Warframe version. You're going to want the crit chance combo multiplier bonus that comes off the Gladiator set mods. Then moving over to the Warframe. Now this build works with any Warframe, and especially if you've got a Warframe that gives damage buffs, you can scale the damage much higher, but I'm just showing it on an Excalibur. Now get the 3 Gladiator mods on the Warframe if you can get the 3 on. You can actually do the same build with one of the Gladiator mods missing from the Warframe, and you'll see in a moment why. But once all the 6 Gladiator mods are active, you'll have 60% crit chance per combo multiplier, which essentially gives you a free blood rush on your Pennant build without actually having blood rush on. And then you're going to want a couple of Arcanes. Arcane Fury, which gives an extra 120% melee damage to the weapon on critical hit, and every swing that you're doing is a critical hit, so you've always got that extra 120% extra melee damage, which scales up the force slash procs after the initial hit of the sword. Arcane Avenger for 30% crit chance when you're damaged, so obviously if enemies are shooting you before you take that swing, you've essentially got an extra 30% crit chance stacked on top of your current build. And now just before we go to the actual Pennant build, we'll make our way to the simulacrum. So I can show you the Pennant build and we can have a look at a bit of the gameplay and what it actually does against the enemy. Right, we're in the simulacrum now, and now we can take a look at the Pennant build. Now moving over to the Pennant, keep in mind the Deconstructor Prime on the Helios has got the 3 Gladiator mods on. The Warframe has 3 Gladiator mods on, and it's got 2 Arcanes, but one of those Arcanes, the crit chance one, can be switched out, and I'll explain what to and tell you why in a moment once I show the Pennant build. But moving on to the Pennant. The Wise Razor stance, obviously because it's the only stance we've got for the 2-handed Nikana at the moment, and the stance gives force slash procs on heavy attacks. Next up you'll have 2 maxed out sacrificial mods for the pressure and steel, because if you have primed pressure point instead of the sacrificial pressure, the sacrificial steel crit chance drops from 275% to 220. So you go want that maximum crit chance out of there with a 2x multiplier for the heavy attacks. You're going to want Killing Blow for 120% melee damage on heavy attack, and it's got increased heavy attack wind-up speed, so it's a bit faster. The intrinsic perk on the Pennant, once you do a heavy attack, you have a short period of time of a speed boost with the weapon anyway. Then you're going to want Gladiator Might and not Amalgam Organ Shatter, and you're going to want obviously the normal Organ Shatter for that extra 5% bonus crit damage. The reason I'm using Gladiator Might still is because obviously you've got that 60% crit chance combo multiplier in there, which essentially gives you Blood Rush without actually having Blood Rush equipped. So because the Gladiator Might's in there, along with the Warframe Gladiator mods, and obviously in the Sentinel, obviously you've got that maximum crit chance, but you've also got increased base critical damage by 60%. So I've seen a few builds out there with people using Rivens for the Pennant, and most of them, their crit damage multiplier is a 6 times or 6 times 1. But without a Riven, I'm already hitting a 6 times multiplier there. Next up is Corrupt Charge for the initial 30 combo, so you get a 2 times multiplier always. The only issue is obviously you have a negative 50% on the combo duration, but because this is a heavy attack build, you're not going for normal attacks all the time, so it's just purely heavy attacks all the time. That's all you're going for. And then I've gone for the 60-60 Toxin and Electric for Corrosive. The reason I've gone for the 60-60s is so it's more versatile to switch the elements from like Toxin or Gas or Radiation. And so you've got a little bit of extra status chance as well, so it's 22% instead of 10 or 16. And then obviously you've got your Slash, which isn't the primary IPS damage number, it's Puncher, but because the Wise Racer gives 4 slash procs on heavy, you're going to get the slash proc anyway. And then obviously Corrosive with a heavy attack damage of 11,532, which is doubled for heavy attacks, obviously with the sacrificial steel for the crit chance. Now if you look at the gas build, exactly the same. It's just obviously the dual stats have switched to gas. If you look at the radiation build, exactly the same thing. It's just the 2 dual stats that have been switched. Now, I'd recommend not using Amalgam Organ Shatter. Don't use Primed Reach, and do not use Berserker. Berserker's nice for the extra speed on your attack speed, but if you're desperate for that extra speed, take out the Arcane Avenger. Yep, I was going to say the wrong one. Take out the Arcane Avenger, and if you've got Arcane Strike, which increases melee attack speed, switch this out for Arcane Strike for that bonus attack speed, so you're not losing overall damage on your Pennant. And the range isn't much of a problem. The sword has quite a large arcing swing, and if you can't be bothered to walk 1 or 2 steps forward after your initial hit on enemies to hit the next group of enemies, then you're a Warframe. You can bounce around and move pretty quick, so that extra range isn't really needed, especially when you're one-hitting the enemy. The Amalgam Organ Shatter, yeah, it's nice to have a bit of extra wind-up speed with 5% less crit damage, but I'd rather have all damage, like have all that bonus damage without sacrificing any of that damage like potential that the sword can do. So now that you've seen that, obviously the focus score doesn't matter, but there's a little bonus to this build as well. It doesn't just work on the Pennant, and I'll show that in a minute, where you can run the exact same build on most hard-hitting weapons, like scythes, machetes, and certain other like heavy blade weapons, and you get the same insane damage. Don't get me wrong, obviously some weapons have a better yield, like where they do better damage wise, because they naturally have better damage as base. But we'll have a look at the damage output for the Pennant. Level 140 Corrupted Heavy Gunners, they're not paused, so there's no stealth multiplier. They're all dead. It only took one swing for each group. Now, if we run the same enemies, but we'll switch from corrosive to gas, and you'll see the weapon hits just as hard. See, one hit, even with gas. So you can already tell it's a hard hitting build. Now switch to radiation. Same again, one hit for all the enemies, even with radiation. So regardless of what element type you put on the weapon with this build, it one hits level 140 Corrupted Heavy Gunners and higher. Now for the bonus, if we put the exact same build on just say the Reaper Prime, which is a scythe, just so you can see on here, the exact same build, except killing blows down there instead of up here. It's just backwards, basically. Run the exact same enemies. Same again, one hits all the enemies regardless. So obviously that's with the Reaper Prime, which is the scythe, the exact same build, and it one hits all the enemies. Keep in mind the same with the Reaper Prime and the Pennant, there's no Riven being used. And with the Reaper Prime, it's got increased crit chance as base with that build. It's got a higher crit damage multiplier with that build. It's got much higher, like double the status chance with this build. And the heavy attack damage is basically the same. Except with the Reaper Prime, it has higher innate slash, like already built in. Where the IPS damage numbers swings more to slash and not puncher. Now, I quickly built a Zor, which was a Machete Zor. And it's the Vargi, hang on, I'll double check this. Yeah, it's the same build, but obviously on this build, with it being a Zor, you could put Exodia Force on, which has a 50% chance on status effect, which will happen on the swing. Will give an extra 200% weapon damage. Couple that with the 120% arcane extra melee damage you're getting on the Warframe. Now, the stance doesn't matter again because the heavy attacks are all the same for that archetype of weapon. The only difference on this one, because machetes, yes, they have a 4 times multiplier on heavy attacks. You have an overall less damage output compared to Nikana's scythes and obviously the Pennant. So I switched out the Virulent Scourge for Primed Fever Strike. So obviously you have to see if your version allows you to do the same amount of former. But obviously when I built the weapon, I instantly put a V in for the killing blow to start off with. So the same amount of former for me. It was 3 former, the same on all the other weapons. So I was able to put it all in. And with this, it's Varjeet 2 Jai Link, the Lacquer Grip, so I've still got some speed. And the strike is the Scythe. The reason I picked the Scythe is because it's slash based and it goes to Machete. Now we'll do the exact same again. Same enemies. 140, Corrupted Heavy Gunners. That was already dying. I don't know why I went for that again. So I mean, the damage yield is lower. Oh. Yeah, so with the Scythe, like with the Machete, you can see, like I was saying at the start of the Machete version, where it's weaker than those other weapons, but it all depends on its base and its already base damage values. But we'll try again to see if we get a better result this time. But more often than not, it'll either be 1 hit or it'll be 2 hit. Yeah, so half of them were 1 hit, and the other couple were 2 hit. So you're still getting the job done with certain other weapons. Now, if we swing over to the set fan with the exact same build, obviously I've got a skin on it. Oh no, I'm missing a mod. I've got no former on it. But yeah, basically here I'd end up putting Voltaic Strike in this gap here. Still got Exodia Force, but we'll see. We'll have a quick look at it without the Voltaic Strike and see how this goes. I can't see it doing the same damage, but but it still should be all right. Is that doing it? Yeah, it was still 1 hitting with 1 mob missing. Oh, is that one gonna 1 hit? Yeah, oh, it did. So I think this will obviously be higher, like in kill faster once that extra mod goes back on. Once I put the 3 former in, just to get 1 mod on. Yep, so even with a mod missing, it still 1 hits all the enemies with the set fan, so that's stronger than the Machete by quite a margin. And if we look at the daggers, I think with this though I've got a Riven on, so I'll double check this. Yeah, I've got a Riven on this one. It's got crit chance, crit damage, and toxin, and I've already got the Voltaic Strike. So normally toxin would be here, but because I've got a Riven there with the toxin in, I would either go for more status or speed or something else, obviously to compensate for what's lost. But I'll have a quick look at this, and keep in mind daggers have a 2x multiplier on the heavy. Yeah, so that one hits everything. So if you didn't have the Riven there, just put the same normal build in, and you would get the same effect. But yeah, that's the build that suits, as you can see, quite a few weapons, and it hits pretty hard. If you're going for a Riven for the Pennant, I'd recommend not going for the usual setup. Go for what complements what you're missing off the build. So for me, it would be you'd switch out Organ Shatter with a Riven, but make sure the Riven has more crit damage than Organ Shatter, and then have range and attack speed, or range and status chance, or crit damage, status chance, and speed. Like, so either way, it's status chance, speed, and range coupled with crit damage. So the main three will be obviously crit damage, and then it's your choice whether you want the range, speed, or range status chance, or speed and status chance, something like that. And then you'll have everything you need like for that build, and it'll probably be like the best OP build you're going to get out of the Pennant, especially if you've got a Riven. But yeah, as you can see, the build does the job very well without a Riven. So like, you don't need to spend like 1,000 plat on a Riven, but if you can get a Riven, then obviously that's entirely up to you. If you want to spend plat for a Riven, or a high amount of plat, that's entirely up to you if you've got the plat. If you've not got the plat, then this build is definitely for you, and you can pretty much take out anything that's thrown out in front of you. So yeah, if you enjoyed the video, feel free to like the video, look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and as always, stay awesome.